Have you ever found yourself in a room full of people or scrolling through a feed full of gatherings and felt a quiet, sinking realization that you're the only one who isn't actually connected to anyone there? The immediate assumption is that something must be wrong with you. It's a red flag, right? But what if that assumption is wrong? What if the real reasons someone might have no friends are far more complex, nuanced, and a lot less judgmental than we've been led to believe? In this video, we're not going to talk about the obvious reasons. Instead, we're exploring the 5 unexpected reasons someone might be friendless. This isn't about placing blame. It's about fostering understanding. The first unexpected reason is what I call the ghosted by life effect. This has nothing to do with a person's character or social skills, and everything to do with circumstance. Major life transitions can act like a pair of scissors, forcibly severing the threads of a social circle. Think about the individual who relocates for a new career, leaving behind a decade of built-in friendships. Consider the new parent whose entire world suddenly shrinks to the 4 walls of a nursery, their previous life of spontaneous outings now a distant memory. Or the person who leaves a workplace, taking with them the daily camaraderie that formed the bedrock of their social life. Or someone recovering from a long-term illness, or caring for an ailing family member. What makes this so unexpected is that this individual was likely very social before the transition happened. There was no fundamental inability to connect. The change was external and often beyond their control. Yet, the effect is a complete reset of their social landscape. The established network is gone, and they are left standing at square one. This leads to a particularly cruel, vicious cycle. The very transitions that erase your social circle are also the ones that are most stressful, exhausting, and emotionally draining. The idea of mustering the energy to put yourself out there, to attend events where you know no one, or to try and build new friendships from absolute scratch can feel utterly impossible. So, the isolation of the transition is compounded by the paralysis that prevents you from escaping it. You're not choosing to be alone. You've simply been ghosted by life itself, and finding the strength to rebuild is the monumental task that comes next. The second unexpected reason is the presence of an invisible wall, built not from arrogance, but from a mind that operates with high intelligence or a uniquely intense focus. For these individuals, the very way they process the world can create an unintentional, yet very real, social barrier. Their natural conversational depth might revolve around niche historical events, the intricacies of theoretical physics, or complex philosophical debates. While these are deeply fascinating to them, they can be intimidating, confusing, or simply boring to others who don't share that specific wavelength. This isn't a matter of one interest being superior to another. It's a fundamental mismatch in cognitive hobbies. Furthermore, the social glue that binds most new acquaintances, lighthearted small talk about the weather, popular television shows, or weekend plans, can feel frustratingly superficial and meaningless to them. They crave substantive connection from the very first interaction, not understanding that, for most people, small talk is the necessary and gentle on-ramp to that deeper highway. Because they struggle to engage in this preliminary social ritual, they are often perceived as aloof, disinterested, or awkward, when in reality, they are just waiting for a conversation they feel is worth having. This often leads to them being labeled a lone wolf, but this is a mischaracterization. Their solitude is rarely a chosen preference. It is more often the quiet resignation that comes from repeatedly failing to find others who spark to the same intellectual or passionate fuel. They are not against connection. They are starved for a specific quality of it that feels increasingly rare. The wall is invisible, because from the outside, they seem standoffish. But from the inside, they are simply waiting for someone to speak their language. The third unexpected reason is a heartbreaking psychological pattern. the self-fulfilling prophecy of low self-worth. In this case, the core issue isn't that other people actively dislike the individual. The problem is that the individual is so deeply convinced of their own unlikability that they unconsciously behave in ways that confirm this painful belief. This often stems from past experiences that chipped away at their sense of self, whether it was childhood bullying, critical family dynamics, or a previous rejection that left a deep scar. Their behavior becomes a shield that unfortunately also acts as a barrier. They might decline invitations, convinced the offer was made out of pity or politeness rather than genuine desire. In conversation, they may avoid sustained eye contact, offer brief replies to avoid monopolizing the interaction or being perceived as a burden, and meticulously analyze casual comments, interpreting neutral statements as subtle forms of rejection. They are constantly braced for the dismissal they feel is inevitable. The tragic irony is that from the outside, these protective behaviors are almost universally misread. What they intend as a way to make themselves smaller and less bothersome comes across as disinterest, coldness, or even arrogance. People naturally pull away from someone who seems unapproachable or uninterested in connecting. This withdrawal is then seen by the individual as the final proof they were waiting for, completing the vicious cycle. I feel unlikable, so I act in a way that makes people stay away, which proves I was unlikable all along. The prophecy writes itself, not because it was true from the start, but because their fear of it being true made it so. The fourth unexpected reason is a matter of energy, not desire. For the highly sensitive person or the empath, socializing isn't just a mental exercise. It's a full-bodied experience that can be profoundly draining. Their nervous systems are wired to process sensory information at a much deeper level. This means that a typical social setting, a bustling restaurant, a loud party with competing music and conversations, or even a bright and chaotic office space, isn't just stimulating. It's an assault on the senses. The chatter of voices, the glare of fluorescent lights, and the general cacophony don't just register as background noise. They demand active processing, leading to a state of overwhelm and exhaustion that is both mental and physical. For the empath, this drain is compounded by an emotional dimension. They don't just listen to people, they can intuitively absorb the emotional states of those around them. Sitting with an anxious friend can leave them feeling tense and worried. Being in a room full of conflicting energies, even if everyone is being polite, can feel like emotional static. After a social gathering, they don't just feel tired. They experience a social hangover, a unique brand of exhaustion that requires significant alone time to decompress and shed the accumulated emotional residue of others. The necessary consequence of this is that they simply require more solitude to recharge their internal batteries than the average person. This isn't a preference they can simply override. It's a biological need. However, from the outside, this need for frequent and extended periods alone is often misinterpreted. Friends and potential connections may see their cancellations, their reluctance to commit to plans, or their need to leave events early as flakiness, aloofness, or reclusiveness. The truth is, they are not antisocial. They are simply engaged in the essential maintenance required to function in a world that often feels too loud, too bright, and too emotionally intense. The fifth and final unexpected reason is perhaps the most misunderstood because it is a conscious, deliberate choice, the intentional purge. This is when an individual actively decides to step into a season of having no friends. This choice is rarely made lightly. It is typically the culmination of a realization that their previous social circle was no longer serving them. The friendships may have been rooted in toxicity, draining their energy with constant drama, or they may have simply become superficial, based on old habits rather than genuine connection or shared values. This person has looked at their social life and recognized a misalignment with the person they are becoming. This period is not a void, but a purposeful friendship detox, or a season of intense personal reevaluation and growth. They might be channeling all their energy into starting a business, mastering a demanding skill, or embarking on a deep spiritual or therapeutic journey. In this context, maintaining the old, unsatisfying friendships is seen as a distraction from their core mission. They have made a calculated decision. They would rather endure the temporary, acute pain of loneliness than the chronic, soul-eroding discomfort of inauthentic connections. It is a strategic retreat, not a defeat. This crucial distinction is what makes this a sign of profound self-respect and maturity. Society often equates being alone with being a failure, but this individual has rejected that narrative. They are willing to sit in the quiet, however uncomfortable it may be, to create the necessary space for higher quality, more aligned connections to enter their life in the future. They are not giving up on friendship. They are raising their standards for it, understanding that you cannot fill a new cup with old, stale water. This solitude is not an empty space. It is the fertile ground being prepared for a better future.